The CNN studio in New York City buzzed with an electric tension, the kind that crackled in the air before a thunderstorm. Rows of sleek, modern lights blazed overhead, casting a stark glow across the polished stage, where two figures sat poised like chess grandmasters, awaiting the opening move. The set, with its minimalist glass podiums and neutral backdrop, felt like a gladiatorial arena, and the audience journalists, activists, students, and everyday folks sat in rapt anticipation, their whispers fading as the cameras began to roll. This wasn't just another policy debate, it was a clash of visions, generations, and sheer willpower centered on the future of education and job opportunities in a nation grappling with economic uncertainty and social divides. The topic was a powder keg: how to reform education to meet the demands of a rapidly changing job market without leaving behind the communities already struggling to get by. Every eye in the room, and millions more watching on screens across America, was fixed on the two combatants: Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the fiery Democratic Congresswoman from New York, and Will Smith, the global icon whose journey from West Philadelphia to Hollywood had made him a household name. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC as the world knew her, sat with an almost regal intensity. At 36, she was a force of nature. Her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her emerald green blazer a bold statement against the stage's muted tones. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, seemed to pierce through the room, carrying the weight of a woman who'd built a movement with her words. AOC was a social media juggernaut, her every tweet capable of sparking a revolution or igniting a firestorm. She'd risen from bartending in the Bronx to become a leading voice for progressive change, championing policies like free college, tech-driven job training, and systemic equity. Her presence radiated urgency, the kind that drew gasps and cheers from her supporters and skeptical murmurs from her critics. Tonight, she was here to sell her vision of an education system that didn't just patch up old wounds, but rebuilt the entire framework to lift up the marginalized communities like the ones she'd grown up in, where dreams often drowned in the grind of survival. Across from her sat Will Smith, a man whose name alone conjured images of blockbuster films, chart-topping rap hits, and an infectious charisma that had charmed the world for decades. At 56, Smith carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who'd seen the highs and lows of life and come out stronger. His gray suit was understated, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sparkled with the focus of a man who'd fought his way from the tough streets of West Philadelphia to the pinnacle of Hollywood. Smith wasn't just an actor or a rapper. He was a producer, a philanthropist, and a father who'd poured millions into education through the Will and Jada Smith Family Foundation. His foundation had funded programs that taught real-world skills coding, carpentry, entrepreneurship to thousands of young people who'd otherwise been left behind. Tonight, he wasn't here to play the celebrity card. He was here to argue for an education system grounded in practicality, one that equipped kids with the tools to succeed today, not just in some distant utopian tomorrow. His smile, warm and disarming, hid a steely resolve, the kind forged in a childhood where every step forward was a battle won. The audience, a cross-section of America blue-collar workers, college students, policy wonks, and curious citizens leaned forward in their seats, sensing the stakes. This wasn't just about education. It was about the soul of the country, about whether bold dreams or hard-nosed realism would chart the path forward. In the control room, CNN producers huddled over their monitors, their headsets buzzing with excitement as viewership numbers climbed. On social media, the hashtag number AOC vs Will Smith was already trending, with users posting memes of AOC's fiery speeches alongside clips of Smith's iconic Fresh Prince moments, as if to say this was a showdown for the ages. Anderson Cooper, the debate's moderator, stepped to his podium, his silver hair catching the light, his voice steady but tinged with the gravity of the moment. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," he began, his words cutting through the hum of anticipation. "Welcome to tonight's debate, where we'll tackle one of the most pressing issues facing our nation: how to reform education to meet the needs of a modern workforce while ensuring no one is left behind." Joining us are Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Mr. Will Smith. Thank you both for being here. Cooper turned to AOC first, his questions sharp and direct. "Congresswoman, you've been a vocal advocate for sweeping education reforms, including free college and tech-focused training programs. Critics argue these plans are too costly and fail to address the immediate needs of workers in struggling communities. How do you respond? AOC leaned forward, her hands clasped lightly on the table, her voice clear and commanding. Anderson, thank you. The question isn't whether we can afford to transform education, it's whether we can afford not to. The system we have now is failing millions of kids, especially in places like the Bronx, where I grew up. Families are drowning in student debt, and good jobs are slipping out of reach for anyone without a degree or connections. My plan: free college, job training in green tech and AI, investments in underserved schools, isn't just about fixing education. It's about breaking down the systemic barriers that keep people trapped in poverty. We're talking about justice, about giving every kid a shot at the American dream, not just the privileged few. Her words were crisp, rehearsed, yet passionate, and they struck a chord. A group of college students in the audience clapped enthusiastically, their faces lit with admiration for AOC's vision. Others, older workers in flannel shirts and worn boots, shifted uncomfortably, their expressions skeptical. AOC's gaze flicked toward Smith, a subtle challenge in her eyes, as if daring him to counter her blueprint for a reimagined America. Cooper nodded, turning to Smith. Mr. Smith, your response? Smith adjusted his posture, his smile warm but his tone grounded, like a teacher about to drop some hard-earned wisdom. Anderson, I hear the Congresswoman's passion, and I respect it. But let's talk real for a second. I grew up in West Philly, where dreams were big, but opportunities were small. I didn't have a college degree or a silver spoon. I had hustle, grit, and a willingness to learn. Education has to meet kids where they are, not where we wish they could be. Right now, 70% of jobs in America require specific skills coding, welding, starting a business. My foundation's been funding programs that teach those skills, and I've seen kids go from lost to employed in months, not years. We can't just throw money at colleges and hope it trickles down. We need to teach practical skills today, because tomorrow's too late for a lot of these kids. Oh, the audience erupted in applause, louder than AOC's, especially from the workers who saw their own struggles reflected in Smith's words. His story, raw and relatable, cut through the room like a blade. In the control room, a producer whispered, "This guy's a natural," as social media lit up with posts praising Smith's real talk. AOC's jaw tightened, just for a moment, before she leaned into her microphone, her voice rising with controlled intensity. Mr. Smith, with all due respect, your approach is too narrow. You're talking about individual success stories, but we're dealing with systemic inequity. Telling kids to hustle doesn't fix a broken system that funnels wealth to the top, while communities like mine get left behind. We need structural change-free college, universal pre-K, job programs that don't just patch up the present but build a future where everyone has a seat at the table. Embrathix. Smith didn't flinch, his smile unwavering but his eyes narrowing slightly. Congresswoman, I'm not against big ideas, but they gotta work. The Department of Labor says 40% of college grads are working jobs that don't need a degree. That's not equity, that's a system wasting people's time and money. I've met kids in my programs, young men and women from places like your Bronx who learned to code or fix solar panels and got hired right away. That's not a patch, that's a lifeline. We need more of that. Not promises that sound good on paper but leave people waiting. The crowd murmured, some nodding at Smith's data-driven jab, others clapping for AOC's call to arms. The divide in the room was palpable, a microcosm of America itself, half reaching for bold reform, half craving practical solutions. On social media, the debate was spiraling, with users posting clips of AOC's fiery delivery alongside Smith's cool-headed counters. Hashtags like #EducationShowdown and #WillSmithSpeaks trended alongside #AOC fights, each side rallying their troops. The producers, sensing a viral moment, zoomed cameras in on the candidates' faces, catching AOC's determined stare and Smith's unflappable calm. Cooper, ever the professional, seized the moment to push deeper. Both of you have laid out compelling visions, but let's get specific. How do you ensure education doesn't just stay theoretical, but actually changes lives for the better? Congresswoman, you're up. AOC took a breath, her fingers tapping lightly on the table, a sign she was gearing up for a fight. Anderson, this is exactly why we need a new approach. My plan invests billions in communities like the ones I represent, schools with crumbling walls, kids with big dreams but no resources. We're talking about training programs for green jobs, scholarships for trade schools, and yes, free college to level the playing field. It's not theory, it's a blueprint for a future where no one's left behind. Her voice rose, drawing cheers from the younger crowd, their energy feeding her fire. She turned to Smith, her tone sharpening. Mr. Smith, you talk about hustle, but not everyone can bootstrap their way to Hollywood. We need systems that lift everyone, not just the lucky few who make it. Smith leaned back, his smile tightening just a fraction, but his voice stayed steady. Congresswoman, I didn't make it to Hollywood on luck. I made it on work years of learning, failing, and getting back up. My foundations help thousands of kids do the same, not with handouts, but with skills they can use right now. You want systems? Great. But systems that don't deliver jobs today aren't helping the kid in your district who's got to pay rent tomorrow. The audience roared, the sounds swelling as Smith's words hit home. Workers in the crowd, their hands calloused from years of labor, nodded fiercely, while students clapped more cautiously. Torn between AOC's ideals and Smith's pragmatism, Cooper raised a hand, his voice cutting through the noise. Let's keep this moving, Mr. Smith. You've emphasized immediate results, but some argue that focusing on short-term skills risks leaving us unprepared for a tech-driven future. How do you balance that? Smith nodded, ready to dive in, but the air in the room had shifted. The debate was no longer just about policy, it was personal, a test of who could connect with America's heart. AOC's eyes burned with conviction. Smith sparkled with resolve, and the audience leaned in, sensing that the real fireworks were yet to come. The stage was set for a showdown that would echo far beyond the studio walls, one that would test not just ideas but the very soul of a divided nation. The CNN studio pulsed with a raw, almost primal energy, the kind that made the air feel thick and the lights seem hotter. The sleek stage, bathed in a clinical glow, was no longer just a platform for debate. It was a battleground where every word carried the weight of a nation watching, waiting, and judging. The audience, a mosaic of America's hopes and frustrations, sat on the edge of their seats, their murmurs a low hum beneath the hum of the cameras. The clash between Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Will Smith had already drawn blood, not through fists but through ideas, stories, and the sheer force of their convictions. The topic education, reform, and job opportunities had morphed into something bigger, a referendum on whether bold dreams or grounded reality would shape the future. The first round had been a sparring match, but now, as Anderson Cooper leaned into his microphone, the room braced for an escalation that would set the internet ablaze and leave a mark on the American psyche. AOC sat with a coiled intensity, her emerald green blazer catching the light like a beacon. Her dark ponytail was immaculate, but her eyes burned with a fire that seemed to dare anyone to challenge her. At 36, she was a master of moments like this, her voice a weapon honed through years of rallying crowds and silencing skeptics. She'd come to this debate armed with a vision, an education system that didn't just teach but transformed, tearing down the walls of inequity that had trapped generations. Her plan: free college, tech training, investments in forgotten communities was a call to revolution, and she wielded it with the confidence of someone who'd already shifted the Overton window. Across from her, Will Smith was a study in contrasts. His gray suit was understated, his posture relaxed, but there was a quiet strength in his presence, like a boxer who knew he could take a punch and still land a knockout. At 56, Smith wasn't just a celebrity, he was a survivor. A man who'd clawed his way from West Philadelphia's tough streets to global stardom through sheer will and relentless learning. His argument, education as a practical tool, not a lofty ideal, resonated with those who saw life not as a dream but as a daily grind. The audience was a living pulse, their reactions shifting with each exchange. College students in hoodies clapped for AOC's soaring rhetoric, while workers in worn jackets nodded at Smith's blunt truths. In the control room, CNN producers were practically giddy, their screens showing viewership numbers spiking with every viral moment. Social media was a wildfire, with number AOC vs Will Smith trending alongside memes of AOC's fierce stare and Smith's cool-headed smile. Hashtags like number education showdown and number Will Smith speaks battled for dominance, each side claiming their champion. Cooper, sensing the debate was teetering on the edge of something explosive, cleared his throat and leaned forward. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, Mr. Smith has emphasized practical skills and immediate job outcomes. How do you ensure your reforms deliver results for workers who need opportunities now, not a decade from now? AOC sees the question like a lifeline, her voice rising with a practiced blend of passion and precision. Anderson, my plan isn't about waiting, it's about acting. We're talking about billions in investments for communities that have been ignored for too long. Places like the Bronx, where kids grow up breathing polluted air and attending schools with leaking roofs. My education overhaul includes job training for green industry, solar, wind, sustainable construction that are hiring today. We're talking about scholarships for trade schools, not just universities, and partnerships with tech companies to create pipelines to high-paying jobs. This isn't a dream, it's a blueprint, backed by studies showing that every dollar invested in education returns $3 in economic growth. The real question is why we're still propping up a system that leaves millions behind while the top 1% hoard opportunity. Her words landed like a thunderclap, drawing cheers from the younger crowd, their hands raised in solidarity. A group of activists in the back unfurled a banner reading, "Education is justice," their voices echoing AOC's call. She turned to Smith, her gaze sharp but measured. "Mr. Smith, you talk about hustle, and I respect your story. But not every kid can be Will Smith. We need systems that work for everyone, not just those with the grit to beat the odds. Your approach feels like telling people to pull themselves up by bootstraps they don't have." The audience murmured, some nodding in agreement, others bristling at the jab. Smith's smile didn't waver, but his eyes narrowed, a flicker of steel beneath the warmth. He leaned into his microphone, his voice steady, almost conversational, but carrying a weight that silenced the room. "Congresswoman, I'm not saying every kid should be me. I'm saying every kid deserves a shot to build their own path. I didn't have bootstraps either, West Philly, didn't hand out silver spoons. But I learned skills, not just in school, but on the streets, in studios, on sets. My foundations trained thousands of kids in coding, carpentry, you name it, and they're working now, not waiting for a system to save them. You talk about billions, great, but the Government Accountability Office says federal job programs often have success rates below 40%. That means 6 out of 10 kids are left hanging. Those are real people, not numbers on a blueprint." The crowd erupted, the applause swelling from the workers and parents who felt Smith's words in their bones. His data-driven jab hit hard, and AOC's confident posture stiffened, just for a moment. In the control room, a producer whispered, "He's killing it," as social media exploded with clips of Smith's response captioned, "Will Smith drops truth bombs." AOC, sensing the shift, leaned forward, her voice rising with a controlled edge. "Mr. Smith, those numbers don't tell the whole story. My plan isn't about short-term fixes, it's about long-term transformation. We're talking about industries that will define the next century, like clean energy and AI. Yes, there's a transition, but we're investing in retraining programs, union jobs, and community colleges to bridge that gap. The alternative, sticking with a system that's failing, isn't just unsustainable, it's immoral." Smith shook his head, his smile now tinged with a hint of defiance. "Congresswoman, morality's important, but it doesn't pay the rent. I've met kids in my programs, young men and women, who were told to dream big but ended up in debt with no job. One of them, a girl named Tasha from Detroit, learned to install solar panels through our foundation. She's got a job now, benefits, a future. That's not a system failing her, that's a system working. You want transformation? Start with what's working and scale it up, not tear it down for a plan that's still on paper." The audience roared, the sound a mix of cheers and gasps as Smith's story grounded the debate in human terms. AOC's eyes flashed, her patience fraying, but she held her ground. "Mr. Smith, Tasha's story is inspiring, but it's one story. My district has thousands of Tashas, and they're not all getting foundation grants. We need systemic, change-free college, universal pre-K, job guarantees to ensure no one's left behind. Your approach cherry-picks success stories while ignoring the bigger picture." The crowd clapped, but the energy was split, reflecting the nation's divide. Smith's real-world anecdotes were winning hearts, but AOC's vision still captivated those hungry for systemic overhaul. Cooper, sensing the debate was spiraling into a personal showdown, tried to steer it back. "Let's focus on specifics. Congresswoman, Can you name a funded, approved program in your plan that's creating jobs right now? AOC seized the moment, her voice steady but urgent. Absolutely. In New York, we're piloting a green jobs initiative that's training workers for solar and wind projects, with 5,000 jobs projected by next year. It's funded through state and federal grants, and it's targeting communities hit hardest by poverty and pollution. That's the kind of scale we need nationwide. The students cheered, but Smith's earlier points about immediate needs lingered, tempering the enthusiasm. Cooper turned to Smith. Mr. Smith, your response? Smith leaned forward, his voice low but commanding. That's a start, Congresswoman, but 5,000 jobs next year doesn't help the kid who's unemployed today. My foundation's working with companies like Google and Tesla to train workers right now, 10,000 hired in the last 2 years alone. We're not waiting for pilots, we're delivering. And let's talk money. Your plan's estimated at $2 trillion over a decade. Where's that coming from? And how do you tell a family in Philly they've got to wait while you tax the rich to fund it? The question was a gut punch, and AOC's jaw tightened. She fired back, her tone sharp but controlled. Mr. Smith, we pay for it the same way we pay for anything worth doing, by closing corporate loopholes, taxing wealth hoarding, and investing in our people. The cost of inaction is higher billions in lost wages, communities left to rot. You're focused on today, but I'm fighting for tomorrow. The crowd clapped, but the response was less fervent, as if Smith's grounded approach had planted seeds of doubt. Then came the moment that changed everything. AOC, perhaps sensing she was losing ground, leaned forward, her eyes locked on Smith with an intensity that silenced the room. Look, Will, you're a star, and I get it, but this isn't a movie set. Sit down, kid, and let the grown-ups handle the real work. The words landed like a thunderbolt. The studio fell silent, a collective gasp sucking the air from the room. Cooper froze, his pen hovering over his notes. The audience sat stunned, some clutching their programs, others exchanging wide-eyed glances. In the control room, producers scrambled, one whispering, "Did she just say that?" While another hissed, "Keep the cameras rolling." Oh. Social media detonated within seconds. Number "Sit Down, Will" trending alongside clips of AOC's quip. Some called it a bold power move, others a reckless misstep, but everyone agreed the debate had just crossed a line. The word "kid" hung in the air, its sting amplified by Smith's age and stature. For a man who'd fought his way to the top, the insult carried a weight that echoed beyond the moment. AOC's supporters cheered, seeing it as a defiant stand against celebrity privilege, but others, including some of her allies, winced, sensing she'd gone too far. The camera zoomed in on Smith, whose face remained impassive, his hands folded calmly on the table. He didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice, didn't even blink. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, as if studying AOC, sizing her up not as an opponent but as someone who'd just made a critical error. The silence stretched, agonizing, as the audience waited for his response. Cooper, recovering, tried to pivot. "Mr. Smith, would you like to respond?" But Smith didn't need prompting. He leaned into his microphone, his voice slow and deliberate, each word chosen with the precision of a man who'd spent decades navigating the spotlight. "Congresswoman," he began, his tone warm but laced with steel, "you call me a kid? I came from West Philly with nothing, no privilege, no connections, just a dream and the will to make it happen. I built a career, a family, a legacy, not by tearing others down, but by lifting them up. I'm here to talk solutions, not sling insults. You want to lead? Lead with ideas, not cheap shots." The audience erupted, the applause thunderous, crossing divides as workers, students, and even some of AOC's supporters clapped for Smith's restraint. His calm was disarming, his refusal to match AOC's fire catching her off guard. AOC's confident smirk faltered, just for a moment, as she realized she might have underestimated her opponent. Smith pressed on, his voice steady but carrying a weight that filled the room. "Let's talk about those kids you're fighting for. I've met them kids like Jamal from Chicago, who learned to code through my program and now works at a tech startup. He didn't need a decade-long plan, he needed a chance. You talk about systems, and I get it, but systems don't work if they don't deliver today. So, Congresswoman, tell me, what's one project in your plan that's hiring someone like Jamal right now? Because I've got a list of programs doing that as we speak." The question hung in the air, sharp and unavoidable. AOC hesitated, then started, We have initiatives in development like our Green Jobs program in New York, and we're working on, Smith cut in, polite but firm. Working on isn't working, Congresswoman. Families can't pay bills with working on. The crowd roared, the applause deafening as Smith's words exposed a gap in AOC's vision. Social media exploded, clips of the moment going viral with captions like, Will Smith mic drop. In the control room, producers watched viewership numbers spike, one muttering, "This is history." Cooper tried to regain control, his voice cutting through the noise. Let's move to our next question-specific policies for integrating technology into education. But the audience wasn't ready to move on, and neither were the candidates. AOC, her face flushed but her resolve intact, prepared to counter, her eyes blazing with defiance. Smith, calm but unrelenting, had drawn first blood, turning AOC's insult into an opportunity to showcase his experience and connect with the audience's real-world concerns. The debate had become a test of who could claim America's trust, and as the tension in the studio reached a fever pitch, one thing was clear. The next round would be even more explosive, and Will Smith was ready to fight. The CNN studio in New York City was a cauldron of emotion, the air thick with the aftershocks of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's biting sit-down, kid jab, and Will Smith's masterful counter. The stage, bathed in harsh white light, felt like the epicenter of a cultural earthquake, each word from the two combatants sending tremors through the audience and across the digital landscape. The sleek glass podiums and polished floors reflected the tension, amplifying the stakes of a debate that had transcended education reform to become a referendum on leadership, empathy, and the soul of America. The audience, students, workers, activists, and everyday citizens sat riveted, their faces a tapestry of awe, division, and anticipation. Social media was a maelstrom, with numbers "Sit Down, Will" and number "Will Smith Speaks" trending alongside viral clips of Smith's calm defiance, while AOC's supporters rallied under number "AOC Fights," refusing to let her fire be dimmed. The control room buzzed with frenetic energy, producers glued to screens showing record-breaking viewership numbers, their headsets crackling with directives to capture every angle of this historic clash. AOC, her emerald green blazer, a vivid contrast to the stage's neutral tones, sat with a fierce determination, her dark ponytail as immaculate as her resolve. The sting of Smith's rebuttal lingered, but her eyes blazed with the unyielding spirit of a woman who'd built a movement from the ground up. At 36, she was a lightning rod for progress, her every word a spark that could ignite hope or fury. Her vision-free college, tech-driven job training, systemic equity was a clarion call to reshape a nation she saw as fractured by greed and neglect. Across from her, Will Smith exuded a quiet power, his gray suit understated but his presence commanding. At 56, he was more than a Hollywood icon. He was a testament to resilience, a man who transformed himself from a scrappy West Philly rapper to a global force through relentless self-education and grit. His argument for practical, immediate, solutions, skills-based training, real-world opportunities struck a chord with those who lived not for tomorrow's promises, but for today's survival. Anderson Cooper, his silver hair catching the light, leaned into his microphone with a voice that strained to maintain neutrality amid the charged atmosphere. "We've heard passionate arguments tonight," he said, glancing between AOC and Smith, their faces a study in contrast her fiery intensity, his unshakable calm. "Before we close, let's pivot to a broader question. How do you bridge the divide between bold reform and immediate needs to ensure education serves all Americans, from urban centers to rural towns? Congresswoman, you're first." AOC took a deep breath, her fingers brushing the edge of the table as she scanned the audience, locking eyes with a group of young women in the front row, their faces alight with admiration. Her voice, when it came, was steady but softer, a deliberate shift to reclaim the narrative. "Anderson, this debate has shown how deeply people care about their kids, their jobs, their future. My vision is about building an America where no one's left behind. Education isn't just about classrooms, it's about opportunity. In places like the Bronx, where I grew up, kids face asthma from pollution, schools with broken windows, and dreams crushed by debt. My plan-free college, trade school scholarships, green job training invests in those communities, creating union jobs in solar, tech, and infrastructure. It's not just about today, It's about ensuring tomorrow's economy doesn't leave us behind while countries like China lead in innovation. I hear the need for immediate results, and that's why we're piloting programs now, like our New York Green Jobs Initiative, hiring thousands this year. We can't let fear of change stop us from doing what's right. Her words drew applause, strong but not unanimous, as Smith's earlier points about practicality lingered in the room. The young women in the front row stood, clapping fiercely, while workers in the back nodded more cautiously, their faces etched with the weight of bills and uncertainty. AOC turned to Smith, her tone sharpening but measured. Mr. Smith, your stories are powerful, but they don't address the systemic barriers holding millions back. You can't fix a broken system by telling kids to hustle harder. We need leaders who see the whole picture, not just their own journey. End of. Smith's smile tightened, but his eyes sparkled with a quiet intensity, like a man who'd faced tougher battles and come out stronger. He leaned forward, addressing the camera directly, his voice warm but resolute. Congresswoman, I'm not here to tell kids to hustle harder, I'm here to give them the tools to win. I grew up in West Philly, where the system wasn't just broken, it was stacked against us. No one handed me a script or a stage, I built it. Step by step, learning as I went. That's what education should do. Equip people to build their own futures, not wait for a system to save them. He paused, letting the words sink in, his gaze sweeping the audience before returning to AOC. You talk about systemic barriers, and I see them too. But tearing down barriers doesn't mean promising jobs that don't exist yet. My foundation's trained 10,000 kids in the last 2 years, coders, electricians, entrepreneurs, working today, not tomorrow. That's not a story, that's a solution. The crowd roared, the applause crossing divides as students and workers alike stood, drawn to Smith's blend of empathy and results. In the control room, a producer muttered, "He's got them." As social media lit up with posts calling Smith the voice of reason, AOC's jaw tightened, her earlier confidence shaken but not broken. She leaned into her microphone, her voice rising with urgency. Mr. Smith, those 10,000 kids are a drop in the bucket. My district alone has tens of thousands facing unemployment, pollution, and schools that fail them. My plan scales up $2 trillion over a decade, funded by taxing wealth, not workers. It's about creating millions of jobs, not thousands, and ensuring no one's left behind. Your approach, with all due respect, feels like a Band-Aid on a wound that needs surgery. Smith shook his head, his smile now tinged with a steely edge. Congresswoman, a Band-Aid that gets a kid a job today is better than a surgery that might not happen for a decade. You say $2 trillion fine. But the Congressional Budget Office estimates your plan could take 15 years to fully implement. What do families do in the meantime? I've got a kid named Marcus in my program 19, from Cleveland, first in his family to graduate high school. He learned to install wind turbines and got hired last month. He's not waiting for your surgery, he's working. Can you name one project in your plan that's hiring a Marcus right now, not next year or in 15 years? The question was a dagger, sharp and precise, and the studio fell silent. AOC hesitated, her fingers tapping the table, a rare moment of vulnerability. We have programs in development, she began, like our Green Jobs Initiative, which is scaling up to hire thousands. Smith cut in, his tone polite but unrelenting. Scaling up isn't hired, Congresswoman. Marcus can't pay his mom's medical bills with scaling up. The crowd erupted, the applause thunderous, shaking the studio as Smith's words landed like a knockout punch. Social media exploded. Clips of the moment captioned, "Will Smith drops the mic," going viral within seconds. In the control room, producers high-fived, their screens showing viewership numbers rivaling Super Bowl highs. AOC's face flushed, but she rallied, her voice fierce with conviction. Mr. Smith, you're twisting my words. My plan isn't just about jobs, it's about dignity, about clean air and water, about a future where kids like Marcus don't have to choose between a paycheck and their health. Your programs are great, but they rely on charity, not systems. We need a government that invests in every Marcus, not just the ones lucky enough to find your foundation. Her supporters cheered, their voices a defiant roar, but the energy was waning, as if Smith's relentless focus on results had chipped away at her momentum. Smith tilted his head, his smile returning, small but knowing. Congresswoman, I'm not about charity, I'm about action. My programs aren't handouts. Their partnerships with companies hiring today. Google, Tesla, local unions, they're in my network, placing kids in jobs as we speak. You want systems? Let's build them, but let's start with what works. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says trade and tech jobs are growing 10% faster than traditional college degree jobs. That's not luck, that's a roadmap. We don't need to wait for a $2 trillion dream to follow it. The audience stood, their applause a tidal wave, drowning out the murmurs of division. Workers pumped their fists, students clapped with newfound respect, and even some of AOC's supporters nodded, caught by Smith's blend of data and heart. Cooper, sensing the debate was reaching a crescendo, leaned forward. Let's close with final thoughts. Congresswoman, what's your message to America about moving forward? AOC straightened, her voice steady but softer, a nod to the human cost of the fight. This night proves we all want better for our kids, our communities, our country. My plan builds a future where education is a right, not a privilege, where jobs are green and fair, and where no one's left behind. We can't let fear stop us from bold change. Her words drew applause, sincere but tempered. As Smith's arguments lingered like a shadow, Cooper turned to Smith. Mr. Smith, your final thoughts? Smith leaned forward, his voice warm but commanding, addressing the camera as if speaking to every American. Folks, this isn't just about policy, it's about people. I believe in using every tool trade schools, tech training, mentorship to make America strong and keep people working. But we've got to talk to each other, not past each other. I've been the kid with big dreams and no path, and I've seen what happens when you give people a real shot. Congresswoman, you've got fire, and I respect it, but fire needs focus to build, not burn. Let's listen, find common ground, and work together. That's how we'll solve this, not with insults, but with answers. End of. The crowd exploded, a standing ovation that shook the studio, crossing every divot, young and old, urban and rural, dreamer and pragmatist. Smith's call for unity, grounded in his own journey, resonated like a sermon, and the audience responded with a fervor that felt almost spiritual. Social media crowned him the victor, with number Will Smith wins trending globally, memes comparing him to his Pursuit of Happiness character flooding feeds. AOC sat back, her expression a mix of respect and defiance, knowing she'd been outmaneuvered but not defeated. As the applause faded, an unexpected moment unfolded. AOC stood, crossed the stage, and extended her hand to Smith. We disagree, but I respect your fight, she said, her voice low but genuine. Smith shook her hand, his smile wide and warm. You too, Congresswoman. Keep pushing, just listen a little more. The exchange, caught on camera, went viral. Hashtag number AOC and Will Smith trending as a symbol of civility in a divided age. The audience clapped softly, moved by the gesture, a reminder that beneath the fire was a shared desire for progress. Cooper closed the debate, his voice cutting through the lingering buzz. Thank you, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and Mr. Will Smith, for a spirited and unforgettable discussion. And thank you to our audience. The final ovation was deafening, the studio alive with an energy that spilled onto screens nationwide. The debate hadn't solved the education crisis, but it sparked a conversation that echoed far beyond policy. Posts on social media shared stories of students, workers, and parents, all craving a system that balanced bold reform with immediate results. Smith, with his calm, precision, and heartfelt stories, emerged as the night's champion, his victory not just in points but in hearts. The lesson was clear. Progress didn't come from shouting or quips, but from listening, grounding dreams in reality, and respecting the people behind the policies. Will Smith, once a kid from West Philly, had shown America that leadership wasn't about fame or fire, it was about building bridges, one practical step at a time. As the studio lights dimmed, the nation watched, inspired to dream big but work smart, knowing that together, they could forge a future for all.